Hi, so this is a quick video on the object compare feature in NetTools, which allows you to actually compare two objects in AD and then display what the differences are between those two objects. So this is the actual the screen itself, so we can actually go and select an object through the browser in this way. So we can just do a quick compare against two folders. So we'll do compare against domain users, domain controllers. If we do a compare, then we can now see what the differences are between those two objects. So what we have here is it tells you whether they're equal, whether the left side or right side is missing, and when you click on the actual column here, we can actually filter the actual display to return the items which we're interested in. So if we want to see anything which is missing on the left hand side or anything on the right hand side, we can actually see those as part of the filter once we've actually done the compare. Now, when you have attributes which have multiple values, we have a plus here which we can expand that one, and we can actually do a compare and see what the differences are. Now, when it comes to the compare of multiple objects, it's more to do with this compare is to see if this value exists on this side compares to the left or right, rather than is there differences between the attribute which is in position 0 on both sides. So there's a slight difference the way these two work. So if we take a user, so we compare two users, we go back to Casey and we'll say, we'll load Casey up as the left hand side object, and then we'll load up this other Casey as the right hand side object, the object compare, and then we get them to compare. And we can actually see the difference between those. So if there's a group membership difference, we can actually see that here as well. And we can actually see sort of object classes and a direct comparison. So most of these should be the same for the users. We can actually use the token one here to actually do a group compare on the actual users, so we can see which ones have actually got the same groups on it. But this is actually displaying it as SID, so it's a little bit harder to actually use. Probably the group compare is a better option to actually use for that, to actually doing that test. So one of the options we do have on here is we can actually do a before and after compare. So if we actually load this up with both the same attributes, that's now going to compare against the same object, so obviously nothing's changed. But if we actually, by selecting those two objects the same, NetTools knows you're trying to do a comparison from a prior to a future state. So if we go back in here now and we go into the AD and we actually do a quick search for Casey, and we actually make a change to her object, we'll say now she's going to work for company A, and we save that, and we go back to NetTools and we get it to run and compare again. Because the DN's the same, the actual compare for the first value doesn't change, and it just uses it, and it just does a subsequent read to actually then do that comparison. So as you can see, that one change has actually caused quite a few attribute changes within the object. And so that was the change we made as far as the actual attribute was concerned. But then these other attributes which are to do with that AD replication and status of the actual object have also been updated and changed. And we can see that as when we do a side-by-side comparison between the two objects. Now that compare was over a few seconds and sort of simple change, but what we can also do is that we can actually do an export. So we can actually save these values. So we can save the left-hand values, and we can put these out, and we'll say this is Casey's details, and we'll save those out. And now what we can do is at a later date, and it could be days, it could be months, however the period wants to be, we come back and we can actually then load those variables and those values back in, and we can actually now do comparison against the current state of that object. So we can actually see what changes have happened over, over that period of time. One thing you'll notice is that the hammer up here is actually turned red, and that's because when you actually do a load, or you do or you click on the hold values, what actually happens is that the actual attributes on the left hand side are held and they're fixed, they don't get changed. And so in order to actually clear that, you do the clear values, and then now that when you actually do a read, you'll actually then go and do a read properly from the actual objects themselves. So the other thing which we can actually do within here is that if we go back to that previous KC object, we can see that there's a number of differences here. And so we can actually do a side-by-side comparison and actually look at the differences at a bit level for these attributes. So if you double click on them, we can actually now see that what parts of the attributes have actually changed and not different, not the same between the two objects. So a good one for this is this replication data attribute here, which you can see that because it's actually two different objects, there's quite a lot of differences between those two objects, and they're highlighted here with this red highlight. Doesn't mean that they're different between the two planes, but the other bits of the data in here, which are green, are actually common between the two objects.